Voices. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Rick Ector. I am a local firearms instructor, gun rights advocate. It is indeed my honor that you all are here today. There's been a lot of news that a lot of people are not really finding out about in a timely fashion. The state of Michigan, a while back, approximately 90 plus days ago, they passed 4 laws that are very significant with respect to gun rights and gun ownership. If you are a gun owner, if you are a person who is entertaining the idea of buying a firearm, bringing a firearm into your family, if you are interested in complying with the law, of course it is always important that you actually know what the gun laws actually are. And some people have made it a point to make it known that they have not really seen a lot of information being published about these gun laws that were recently enacted and just a few days ago actually took force. By took force means, hey, they can start punishing you for these offenses should they actually catch you in violation. Well, what are these laws that they are enforcing now? There is a law called a red flag law. Some of you may have heard of that. We're going to definitely be talking about that today. There is also a firearm storage law that took effect. In addition to that, there is a registration law. In the state of Michigan, it has been required to register handguns going all the way back to, I believe it was 1927 when the Michigan Firearms Act was enacted. Back then, it only applied to pistols. Right now, long guns, that is rifles and shotguns, are in the crosshairs, to use the metaphor, and that they are looking to at least address what they feel. I think it's a mistakenly stated comment that they feel that it's a loophole, right? There are no such things as loopholes, my opinion. These are just features in the law that the anti-gunners do not like. But before I jump head first into the presentation, I am sincerely thankful that all of you are here. Some of you I've actually have met before and in person, and I am truly glad that you came out to come listen to the presentation. I did this presentation once before, about a month ago. It was well received, but in planning it, because I didn't make it a free event, I'm thinking the local news stations were using that as a justification because I charged like a nominal fee. I think it was like $25 to attend the seminar. And then they used that as a justification not to let people know about it. Well, okay, I said, okay, I learned. It's free, 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 free. Tell the world about it. And then, no, they still didn't cover it. I said, okay, they were just playing with me, just pulling my leg. But so it is. And you know, I can start talking about my own pet theories about conspiracies and not wanting people to know about the law and to catch them unawares and have them bear the full brunt and the force of the law. But no, I'm not going to go in full conspiracy mode, not today. Before I dive into the subject matter in great detail, just want to give you just a little information about me if we had not met before. City of Detroit resident, was a person who really was not brought up with guns during my rear end and in my youth. It was something I saw other people do. I really had no interest in it. I did own a home, you know, I was married, kids, you know, working in corporate America, doing the whole thing. And life was just busy. I mean, if you've ever been married and if you've ever had small kids, you know how things can, life can really zoom by because you have like an endless list of chores and things that need addressing. And so I had heard about this concealed pistol license approximately, I believe it was either 2000 or 2001, when the state of Michigan decided to go to what's known as a shall issue system of licensing. Shall issue means that if you meet all the requirements for a Michigan concealed pistol license, upon your successful application, payment of the fee, and passing a background check, the state of Michigan shall give you your concealed pistol license. Well, before shall issue, we had a very different scheme in place. Under this scheme, may issue, it was a system that was limited to only allowing special people or athletes, movie stars, politicians, people who were deemed to be more important than the common folk. And so when this law changed, when the law changed in 2001, it really was a major civil rights movement act that actually got implemented. The fact that your basic, core, fundamental right as an American was compromised, your right to keep and bear arms. And many people were predicting that a lot of things were not going to be positive. They were thinking that there would be blood in the streets, that these heathens in the major urban areas and the outlying suburbs, they were just bloodthirsty killers who just needed an opportunity, let alone access to a firearm to actually do those evil deeds and to hurt and harm their fellow citizens. And to make it concrete, they actually put it in the law, to their detriment that they found later. They actually put it in the law that the state must compile statistics on firearms and the people who use those firearms and commit crimes with them. The interesting thing, the thing that bears out, the thing that they discovered was that people who actually qualified to get this Michigan concealed pistol license were actually more law-abiding than the average citizen. As a matter of fact, they are more law-abiding than law enforcement officers. So really they're collecting all of this data and they're not really publicizing it because it doesn't make their point in their propaganda machine to speak evil about firearms. So, did the gun rights thing and was robbed in my driveway at gunpoint, and I decided, you know what, I need to shore up this weakness. Got my concealed pistol license, started training, became a firearms instructor, racked up certifications, decided I wanted to teach, enjoy it immensely. I started a program where I started to train women how to operate firearms. There was a news story approximately 13 years ago where a woman's body was just found naked and she had been violated in the street. And I thought it was really distressing and disturbing. I invited 4 other fellow firearms trainers to come together and meet me at a gun range, and we'll go on Facebook and we'll ask women to join us, and we'll teach them how to shoot for free. What's free? I mean, free is like the magic word. You say free, someone's going to show up and look. Yes, try it. It's like green eggs and ham. Just try it. It's free. And I only had 50 women to show up that first year. But talked with a lot of friends in the gun rights community. They say, hey, man, keep going. Keep going. Let's see where this thing goes. See where it goes. And so gradually you grow it. You go from 50 to 100, 200. You start doubling and you start growing by leaps and bounds. And then the 1 year where you think you would have your worst year, I'm talking about 2020, right? That's when everybody was thinking the world was going to end because, just because, right? And everything's shut down and everything's closed. We had our biggest event ever. We trained 1,936 women how to shoot in 2 days. Numbers have dropped a little bit, but we're still roughly averaging 1,500. So I figure by this year I will eclipse 10,000 for my life of doing these free shooting events for women. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about these gun laws. One gun law that is at our door is a storage law. Right? There has been some issues that related to storage. Well, what issues are we talking about? Well, there were a couple of cases that were highly publicized roughly a year ago. Roughly a year ago, there was one incident that happened, I believe it was at the University of Michigan. There was a guy who obviously had some mental issues. In the aftermath, we found out that he had been convicted of a felony and was precluded from owning a firearm. So when I tell you that this guy who committed this heinous, atrocious act, he did it with the firearm that he was statutorily barred from owning. So we had a felon with a gun go into the campus of Michigan State and proceeded to shoot and mow down a ton of students. And I remember when that incident unfolded. You know, you looked at the news media and it was almost surreal to me because in the aftermath, you had all of these law enforcement agencies. They were making these press conferences and they were like, man, we did some really great work. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You did really great work. You say, well, we had people from the federal government, the county government, the local government, the state government. We had our plans and we issued the clarion call and we executed those plans and we did it really fast and we responded and we exceeded our expectations. In their exceeding their expectations, several young people were shot and killed by a guy who was walking on foot with a handgun. He shot everyone he wanted to shoot, and then he walked 6 miles all the way back home, and they could not find this guy for hours until he showed up back home in his neighborhood, and then people called the police and said, hey, he's home now. So hours later, they go to his house, and then this gentleman, well, I won't call him a gentleman, this monster killed himself. So this is half of the so-called reason why these draconian gun laws were rushed and enacted. And of course, the case you probably heard the most about because the narrative fits better the way that they like to talk about how evil guns are. In this particular scenario, we're talking about over in Oxford, the Oxford shooting, right? I believe the name of the family was the Crumleys. You had this obviously very disturbed young man who obviously had some problems. And if you followed some of the testimony and court proceedings, you know, he did all sorts of odd and weird things that I think anyone, if they paid any attention whatsoever as to the things that he was doing and allegedly the things that he was accused of doing, he obviously needed some help. And if you go through and actually go through and read all of the court transcripts, I started going through it, and after a certain point, I had seen enough. I know enough to know that if you are a parent who loves their child, you will, if you see that they are in need of some help, you will get them the help that they need. You won't entertain some of the wild and crazy things that they are contemplating. And so, yeah, unfortunately, he, the young Crumley gentleman, the student, he committed that atrocious crime and people died, right? I believe it was 4 people that died. Unprecedented, the state was bloodthirsty and it wanted its pound of flesh. This young man was tried as an adult. And while he was tried as an adult, he was given some godly sentence. It was it 60 years in prison. He'll probably die behind bars. The state decided that wasn't enough. The state decided, yes, he's an adult. We tried him as an adult. He's an adult in the eyes of the law, so we can punish him like an adult. Paradoxically, the state now wants to try the parents. The mother was convicted of 4 crimes. I forget which crime they were, but they were all felonies, right? And so I believe the top penalty is 15 years. So if you do them all concurrently, she's going to do 15 years in prison for what her son did. This is unprecedented, right? I'm a regular guy. I think I can follow laws decently, but how do you treat a person as an adult, right, legally, and then punish the parents? Well, we're in brave new territory now. We are entering a new landscape. A lot of interesting laws are going to be passed with some interesting interpretations and some conclusions that they want to implement. But having said that, I know I wanted to address safe storage. I mean, we actually have a safe storage law on the books. So for the purposes of demonstration, I want to make sure that we are on the same page when we talk about safe storage of firearms. Because we actually have a statute now, and we'll talk about that very soon, that requires it. A very fundamental rule of firearm safety is that you should ensure that your firearms are in a secure location. What that secure location works out to, before the law got implemented, before the law was implemented, you know, if you kept your gun in a location where children could not gain access to it so they can hurt themselves or hurt other people. It's a fundamental firearm safety rule. Most gun owners, most conscientious, law-abiding gun owners, who, especially those who have training, already know these things. Well, what are the people that we have to worry about? From respect to our rights, unfortunately, when I follow these stories when they unfold in the media, many times it's individuals who are barred from even owning a gun. So you have a person who's statutorily ineligible doing something ill-advised with a firearm, and it's paraded in the media like, see, look what happened. You know what? Can't trust you people. Unfortunately, there are some people who are not responsible with their firearms, and sometimes it's the most tragic of circumstances. Some cases that I seem to recall from just my personal memory is that there was one case where this one woman was at home by herself. She lived alone. She had some company that came over that brought their child with them. Okay, so this woman, she lived at home. Her bedroom is all the way upstairs, and all the way upstairs in a shoebox. Yeah, it's not a great storage method, but in a shoebox under her bed, all the way upstairs to her bedroom, which had a closed door. So she's entertaining company at her place. A friend and their child come over. This child leaves the area and goes upstairs without permission and starts rummaging through her things. She finds a gun. Yes, it was loaded, and yes, they killed her. That kid killed themselves with that gun. And yes, it is indeed a tragedy. Not only do you have to make sure that you're safeguarding your firearms in your residence, but if anybody ever comes over your house and they seem to have children that cannot police themselves or respect your property, yes, we need to address them. Some of the things that the state legislature is talking about is strictly punitive. And I say strictly punitive, in my opinion, the state of Michigan enacted this storage law to punish people who suffered a huge, unimaginable tragedy. I mean, to lose a family member is always tough, especially as you get older and you start to lose parents, right? Well, and I'm glad I can't speak to this personally, but from what I understand, it's immeasurably more difficult should you lose a child, let alone lose a child, your child, in your home who perished because your gun. Yeah, so when we look at what the state is doing or going to do if someone manages to hurt themselves because they weren't properly segregated from this firearm. I believe that implementing these new draconian penalties to people who are suffering among this tragedy, I think you get your pound of flesh and you make your statement in the media, but you do absolutely nothing to resolve the problem. The problem is kids gaining access to firearms. So you say, hey, let's have a law. Let's say a mandatory storage law. You have to lock your gun up in a case and lock it up. Well, if you actually look at the statute, well, you know what? There are some potential issues there. The state says that it must be locked up, right? Locked up. We're going to actually go into the actual way that they say that it has to be locked up. But one thing that I wanted to do before I start diving in and talking about the statute is that I wanted to actually demonstrate how to safely store a firearm. There is, oh, like where did it go? You're like, where did it go? My bag, where did my bag go? Well, I needed to find my bag because I put something in my bag. It's like that Brad Pitt movie. What's in the bag? You all remember the movie? Seven? Yeah. Love that movie. And so, yeah, I actually have a gun in church. But here's the thing. I'm following the law. I have permission. Here is a firearm, and I'm not sure if many of you are adequately familiar with the gun, but I always make sure that I clear the action, remove the magazine, and I have people who I know how to look and ensure that the firearm is not unloaded. Last thing I want to do is end up on the news, right? Rick Ector, teaching fundamental firearm safety, teaching about the gun laws, shoots himself, right? That'd be very embarrassing. Okay, so with respect to demonstrating how to safely secure your firearm, should you choose to do so. Did I give everyone a gun law? I had to miss at least one of you. Who did I miss?
I came late.
You came late? You said I came late or you came wait?
I said I came late.
Oh, you did. I thought you said can't wait. I'm going to get you. So you have this key and you unlock it. And here's your firearm. You open the action such that you can see straight down into the gun. You can take a gun lock, run it completely through the firearm, and then you can secure it at the end. And yes, this firearm is locked. It is secure. There is no way that you can load this gun, let alone operate it. There's another style of lock that I also have, and this is a lockbox. And a lot of people talk about using lock boxes when they secure their firearms. And they're really cool because, yeah, you can lock it. No one can gain access to it. One drawback to this, though, is that if I have this lockbox, say, in a bedroom, and I have my gun locked in it, and let's say I'm not in my bedroom and someone kicks in my door or climbs through my window, I am separated from this lockbox. So, yeah, there's a problem. You could have multiple lock boxes. You could have a lockbox collection. And every individual box has a gun in it and it's locked and stays all over the house. Do we have multiple keys, or were we fortunate enough to have the same lock in each one of those lock boxes? Problematic. Same thing goes with the cable lock. Oh, gee, what's your solution, Rick? Well, I don't have any small children in my house, so I don't have to worry about securing my firearm. But, you know what? A question has been raised based on the way the statute is written. It could be a scenario where a so-called kid breaks into my home and finds a gun that wasn't secured, that I didn't have to secure because I'm there by myself. No one else lives there. A child under 18 has come across my gun. They found my gun because they broke in my house and stole it. And if they hurt themselves with my gun, or if they hurt someone else with my gun that wasn't secured, these are some very new, interesting areas of the law that we're going to keep a lot of attorneys and people working because of these unfortunate laws that were put on the books. Well, gee, Rick, you're bemoaning the law. What's your solution? Well, my solution is rather simple. Punishing people and heaping more and more punishment on top of punishment. Well, we're trying that. It doesn't seem to be working. Why don't we take a more proactive stance? Why don't we get to these kids when they're young, like they used to do, back when Terry was in elementary school, long time ago back in the 50s, right?
You were writing on stone back then.
I mean, they would actually allow kids to bring guns to school, right? And then during lunch break, they go out into the woods or the areas out, and they would shoot cans or shoot various things off of a fence. It's called plinking. And it was a thing that they did. Everyone knew and understood fundamental firearm safety. Well, gee, Rick, you're advocating teaching kids how to shoot at school? Sure, we did it when I was in school. ROTC used to shoot in school. I mean, they didn't shoot any large calibers, but they shot the smallest caliber, like 22 LRs. They shot those in school as part of the program. But at the very basic level, start teaching kids when they're young. National Rifle Association teaches the Eddie Eagle program, award-winning program. When the children are first able to start walking and talking, you need to start talking to them about guns that early. And one of the very earliest things you can do is Eddie Eagle. Eddie Eagle is 4 points. It's if you see a gun, stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell a responsible adult. This is a very crucial program that at least gets them started. And then you start teaching your kids as they grow and as they get older. If you're going to the gun range, have them come to the gun range with you. If you can't get them at the indoor ranges, we have plenty of outdoor public ranges. Get them involved in organized activities. With respect to scouting, scouting still shoots firearms. And as a matter of fact, a child as young as 10 years of age and sometimes younger can be issued a state of Michigan hunting license. There is a proud hunting tradition here in the state of Michigan, and there's no reason why we can't continue that. As a matter of fact, with the loss of people promoting these programs, we're finding that with the deer population, it's overpopulated, that their numbers are exploding, and that they're being subjected to the reality of starvation, and they're dying a horrific death. You know, those deers could be, get this, harvested and use that meat, that venison to feed people. A lot of people hunt and they donate to charity, or they take it home for themselves, stock the freezer. Bottom line, the point that I'm getting to is that education, indoctrination, and training is how we're going to address this kids and firearms problems. Legislating these draconian punishments for individuals that were not safe with their firearms, they thought they could hide the firearms from their kids. You can't hide anything from a kid. You really can't. Whether you're there or you're at work, they're running through the house and they're looking and searching. What are they looking for? Anything, everything. They know where the things are that you think are hidden. I mean, if you got interesting pictures around the house, you have firearms that are not secured. I mean, if you have Christmas toys, birthday presents, stacked away, locked away, they know where they are and they're going to find them. Trust them to be kids. They are going to actually do what kids do. But with respect to this storage law that the state of Michigan, within a matter of days, just recently enacted. This is enrolled Senate Bill number 79. I just printed it. I thought it was going to have the associated MCL number off of it. I'll have all of your email addresses. I'll put something together and send that out if that proves useful to you. But in essence, enrolled Senate Bill 79. This has been passed and it's in force. It has been active for at least a couple of days now. Valentine's Day, I believe, was the effective date of these new laws. So here's Section 9.1. An individual who stores or leaves a firearm unattended on premises under an individual's control and who knows or reasonably should know a minor is or likely to be present on the premises shall do one of the following. You have to do one of these two things if you have a gun and a kid. You have to store the firearm in a locked box or container. I showed you guys what a locked box or container was, right? The other option, keep the firearm unloaded and lock the firearm with a locking device that properly engages to ensure the firearm inoperable by a person other than the owner or an authorized user, right? So they definitely want you to lock your guns up. Now, this is in the statute. It says this is what you have to do. You have to do this, supposedly. An individual who enters onto the premises of another person, stores or leaves a firearm unattended on the premises, and who knows or reasonably should know that a minor is likely to be present on those premises shall do one of the following. Store the firearm in a locked box or container, keep the firearm unloaded, and lock the firearm with a locking device that is properly engaged to render the firearm inoperable. So these are the requirements that are hard-coded in the law. This stuff, the way it's written, it doesn't seem like it's negotiable to me. Here's the thing. As I mentioned earlier, I live at home, alone. I have guns at the house. I am not going to lock up my guns if I don't have a kid. But yeah, Rick, you're probably at risk of some kid breaking into your house when you're not at home and stealing your gun and now putting my future in jeopardy because you can't control your kid, right? Let's see. An individual is guilty of a misdemeanor punishable by imprisonment of not more than 93 days or a fine of not more than $500 or both if an individual violates this situation. The minor obtains the gun. The minor either does one of the following. He exhibits the gun in a public place or possesses the firearm in the presence of another person in a careless or reckless manner. Your kid gets a hold of your gun, goes out, is seen with the gun, and does something inappropriate with the gun. You, as that gun owner, can be held guilty of a misdemeanor for 93 days. But yeah, that's relatively benign. It is a misdemeanor, so it is serious. Here's another section. We're going to start escalating. If an individual violates this law by failing to store or leave a firearm in the required manner, right, and a minor obtains the firearm, inflicts injury upon a minor or another person, that either hurts himself or someone else, you would then be guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment of not more than 5 years, a fine of $5,000, or both. Okay, so we have certainly escalated. Now, we're going to continue the escalation. You're like, Rick, how high are we going to go? Let's see. If an individual violates this law and fails to store a firearm in a required manner such that the minor obtains the firearm, discharges it, inflicts serious injury or impairment of a body function upon himself or another person, that individual, that is the gun owner, is guilty of a felony punishable by not more than 10 years or a fine of $7,500 or both. So yes, the outcomes are more severe and the punishment is becoming more and more severe. And of course, the top case, the top charge, the top scenario is when a minor obtains the firearm, discharges it, inflicts death upon himself or some other person. That gun owner will be guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment of not more than 15 years, a fine of $10,000, or both. So yes, we can see, excuse me?
Oh, we're gonna add a question.
Oh, yeah, sure. So yeah, as you can see, it's very harsh, very draconian, and it does not address the core issue. The core issue is what can we do to better protect our children? My answer is through education and training. That is how we make the difference. This current law, as it has been written, as it's been passed, as it's been enacted, it is not proactive. The only way you could possibly be proactive, the way I see it, if you did something even more draconian, that is, if you had roving bands of law enforcement conducting random searches upon your residence and saying, hey, your gun is not secured in the proper manner, and as a result of this raid, we're going to take you into custody, charge you with these offenses, and do our darndest to convict you. That, to me, is not America. That's not this country. I don't know what country that is, but I don't want to be there if we're authorizing that sort of behavior. A question, I believe.
Yeah.
Question, sir?
I understand all that, and that makes all perfect sense. But me, coming from a selfish position, I have enough guns now where I bought a gun safe.
Okay.
And it's in a part of my house where if they wanted to look, they can look through a window and they can see my gun. And just knowing that they're locked up, no one's going to, I'm selfish. I don't want someone coming to my house and taking my guns. I want them to be in my house when I get home. So selfishly, I keep them locked up in the safe.
Okay. That was a great story.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a question
No,
in that story?
no.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I'm a firearms instructor, and when I teach,
Yeah.
you know, one of the things that I do is, of course, I field a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the feedback is not actually a question.
Right.
So
I'm guilty.
No. Feedback is okay because we're informal here. You know, I have some leeway and some flexibility. When I'm teaching those CPL classes, man, people say, look, Rick, you told me if I was here on time at 9, you're going to get me out of here by 6. And I'm like, yes, but to do that, you have to help me. You have to stop asking me questions that are not on the agenda. Don't ask me about aliens from outer space and am I violating intergalactic law if I shoot them back? Yes, sir.
Specifically about the law that you said. It starts off, I see that they all build on the original statement you made about locking them up knowingly, there's children in the home.
Mm-hmm. And it escalates in terms of the actual outcome.
Yes,
What
it
happens?
builds off of that. So the question is, you kept stating if someone breaks in your house, it's a minor. You don't knowingly know that someone's going to gain access to your house, it's a minor. So right there, that, as far as I'm concerned, that takes you out of the equation.
Look, look. There are some analysis I've heard of the family's mother being convicted of those 4 felonies for what her son did. There are people who strongly, vehemently disagree with that verdict. And there's other people out here that say, well, look, somebody has to be found guilty. We have to have our pound of flesh. And I'm looking at this scenario and I'm like, okay, great. Yes, there has been a loss of life. Yes, it's a tragedy. Yes, there were missed opportunities to give this young man the treatment and the help that he so rightly need and deserved. He was failed by not only his parents, he was failed by the school system. This is my personal opinion, right? But I think there's so much more we can do on the front end proactively to basically, use the term I've heard someone else coin, to gun-proof your kids. Right? This is to do whatever you can to raise them in such a manner that a gun doesn't have any mystery or awe to it. It's just another thing. I have an arrangement with my grandkids, and yes, I'm a grandpa. Man, I've earned this great. They come see grandpa. Grandpa's always talking about his gun, what it is, what it's for, what it's used for, how to operate it. If you're ever curious about it, let me know and we will talk about it. Whatever. We will do something. I want to kill your curiosity. I want you to look at it like a toaster. Nothing special. It has a purpose. You throw bread in it, out comes toast. Put bullets in it and you shoot it. That's what it is. It's a thing. Yes, sir. Did I answer your question?
Kind of.
No, well, see, that's why I asked. What did not get?
The fact that you don't know that someone's gonna break in your house. Say I've got a gun that's loaded.
Hmm?
I know there's no one else.
No one should be there.
Right?
No one should be
The
there.
sock door loaded, whatever.
It's an
Someone
open
breaks
legal
in
question.
And finds it.
It's an open legal question based on the way the statute was written.
Basically, right? And also, I didn't know that someone would break in, or that they would be underage.
You know, the government seems to be so secure about us protecting our guns from criminals. Why don't they protect us from the criminals who are breaking into our homes? Right, yeah. But yes, your point is, you know what? It's an open legal question. And you know what? Eventually, I predict, you heard it here first, we're going to get an answer to that.
The second half of that is, as far as the storage goes, safe storage, you had said something about locking it up, unloaded, and my question is, can you have the gun magazine loaded, chambered, in a lockbox like that? Or does it?
I mean, if it's in a lockbox, no one can gain access to it.
But the law that you stated said something about being unloaded.
I think it's an either or.
Either or, yeah.
Okay, that's all.
I think the operable intent, if you will, is that they want it to be inaccessible. If it's in a lockbox, it's inaccessible. If you got a cable lock through it, it's inaccessible.
What's the lockbox? It's got a gun.
Oh, here's the thing, right? It's a mess. Question.
So, I carry my firearm 24/7.
Okay.
I have a minor child in the house.
Okay.
While carrying my firearm in the house with my minor child, am I now breaking the law?
I hope not. I don't think so. You have complete control and access to that firearm. It's in your possession. And here's the bigger question. Here's the bigger point I want to make. And I make this point when I teach the CPL class. You, by wearing that gun, simply by wearing it, what are you doing with it?
Concealing.
Not necessarily concealing it, even more basic than that. Just by having it on, you are doing what? You're using it. That is how you use a gun. Like one of the things I talk about in CPL class is how do you use a gun? Do you understand what using a gun is? If you have a gun in your holster on your waistband, I'm saying you're using it. For what purpose am I insinuating that you are using it? Personal protection, yeah, even if you're at home. And yes, maybe I'm odd, but yeah, when I'm at home, I have a gun around. And it's loaded. Just in case, right? You know, interesting thing, from time to time I'll get these knocks on my door. And I'm like, well, gee, I haven't been out in days. Like, who in the heck is this? And then I'll open the door and it's like some young people that are startled that I'm there. And then suddenly my spider senses start tingling and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this was one of those, I'm gonna knock on your front door, see if you're home, and then tiptoe around the back and break a window and then commit a burglary. That may have been what that is. Did you have a question? Or was that?
I had a minor comment.
What's your comment?
He's talking about a very gray area, right? The zealous prosecutor and the anti-gunners will go for the throat on that.
Terry, you have an observation point you want to make?
Yeah, just real briefly on the gentleman's question there, you will not be prosecuted if someone breaks into your house and steals your gun and does something with it, because again, it is a intent crime. Whether the person's 15 or 16, the way the statute reads, and I understand where Rick's coming from, but from a legal perspective, the way the statute reads, you have to know someone, a minor is coming into your house. If you don't have a minor there, or you know a minor is coming into your house, I think stating that someone would knowing someone's going to break in your house, that goes way too far. So there would not be it would be very difficult for a prosecutor to basically come forth and say, a 15-year-old broke into your house, committed a home invasion, actually home invasion first, which is a 25-year felony, because they walked in, grabbed a gun, and walked out, and did something with that gun. So I do not see that as a issue. But again, the problem is the way the law is written. It's kind of written in gray. It's written in lawyer, not written in normal. So that's why a lot of people get that question.
I know the law changes a lot, well, when it pertains to commission of a felony. Like, as you're committing a felony, things change in the law, right?
Well, correct, but in this case, if someone's broken into your house, they've committed a home invasion, 1, 2, or 3. If they grab if they go in with the firearm or come out with the firearm, it's a home invasion first degree. So they've committed a felony, whether you've got the gun laying on the table, whether you've got it locked up, as long as there's no minors in the house at the time that you knew were going to be there, then you should be exempt from any prosecution.
So I have a question. So if this occurs, would you still be potentially charged and then need to acquire an attorney to defend you for the situation based on the way the law has been?
So if that question is directed to me, I'll just say it this way. How could you be charged for someone breaking into your home
I hope not.
and taking your gun and doing something with it? The crime has been committed against you, and it is a home invasion. In this case, a home invasion 1, it's 20 or 25 years, I can't remember. But it's at least a 20-year felony that someone is committing. And they're not going to turn around and say, you didn't have your gun locked up. How do they know whether your gun was locked up or secured or not? I mean, yeah.
Show me your gun lock.
Well, I mean, there are
Doesn't
bigger.
a police report relieve you of that? The minute you make a police report, they're gonna inventory what was taken. The first thing you're gonna say is, they got my gun.
Well, let me just say this, I'll turn back to Rick. Again, I think you're focusing on an area that is highly unlikely, where someone has broken into your house, a kid, and the kid has committed a very serious felony, and the kid has taken your gun and other things, and now walks out and they're gonna charge you. That'll never stand.
Right. It'd be a hard one.
Is Pastor Buddy around?
He just walked out.
Yeah, I want to show you the next video. I want to get Pastor Buddy to cue this up and run. We are transitioning over to the next topic, red flag laws.
Boo.
Okay.
You thought you would?
Hey, Rick?
Yes.
Can I say, because I'm intrigued with that thing in Oxford, not because, it's...
Your son is attempting to reach you on your cellular device. Your son is attempting to reach you on your cellular device. Your son is attempting to reach you on your cellular device.
Involuntary manslaughter.
Sir, can I ask you a personal question?
Or negligent.
Sure.
In manslaughter.
From your legal opinion, you and I have not discussed it, right?
Correct.
What do you think of the verdict of the mother?
So I did the analysis, the legal analysis on CBS Stream. So I was there just about every day, and I saw probably 85% more of the trial. What this was, and I said this, to get to, the only charge she was charged with was involuntary manslaughter.
Manslaughter.
That's it. The only charge. And in order to do that, they had to show there was a reckless act, or she knew or should have known certain things. I think, and again, if anybody was here on the jury, I'll just say this, I think they completely got it wrong. This was about bad parenting, not about involuntary manslaughter. And this basically, if you look at the laws that Rick just talked about, the higher one, if you don't keep your gun locked up and something happens and someone gets it and death happens, that's what she was basically charged as, even though that law hadn't come into place. She was just charged with involuntary manslaughter. And legally, there was no way to get there. Now, if they would have charged child abuse, and as a result of child abuse, involuntary manslaughter, I personally could have lived with that. But we also have to remember, and I know this is being recorded, and I am conscious of it, it is an election year. And in this year, you have a politician, which is your prosecutor, who is up for election. And in all the cases that have happened over the last 4 years, I have yet to see Karen McDonald in any courtroom. So when you see, this was sending a message out, in my opinion, to gun owners that we're coming after you. Because I have said on TV that, quite honestly, if that kid would have went to school with a bomb, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But because the tool of choice was a firearm, that's why we are here, and that's why everybody, and one side note, I talked to another attorney this morning, and Rick, I'm sorry,
No, it's good
I
stuff.
talked to another
Good stuff.
attorney this morning, and he sat on the committee when they were talking about some of these laws, and one of the things Karen McDonald said was, we have enough laws on the books to prosecute people for these things. But what are they now doing? Demanding another law. Why? And in retrospect, these laws, I don't see any, and I'm assuming no one in here is a criminal, but when Rick does these classes, I rarely see it stacked with criminals saying, how do I get out of this? How do I get around this? Right? This is a measure to scare the gun-abiding citizen, and I'm telling you, 95% of everything you're doing now is probably already good enough. But this is just putting fear and other things in you. So, long story short, I disagree with the verdict simply because I did listen to the testimony, I did watch it, and I saw some legal maneuvering and wrangling that her having an affair has nothing to do with anything. Her dealing with her horses, and a lot of things were taken out of context. But anyway.
Yeah, but you being an attorney, you got to realize that she convicted herself with 5 words.
Which were?
I wouldn't have done anything different. That's what the jury took home. That's what the jury took to the deliberation room. Everything else that was said, it didn't mean a damn thing. I wouldn't have done anything different is what got that lady convicted.
So let me ask you a question. If she would have said, I would have waited around 5 minutes, or I would have did something else different, that would have said
anything different than that.
If she would have said she'd have done something different, that would have meant she was culpable of something. So the question becomes at that point, based on we have the opportunity to look at things in hindsight.
True.
And when someone looks at something, they can say, you should have did this, you should have did that. But at the time, and that's what the jury should have looked at, what did she know? And to me, it would have been negligent, it would have been involuntary manslaughter if she would have opened that bag, looked in the bag, saw a gun, zipped it back up and did nothing. That way she knew he had a firearm and did nothing. That day of school, it was all speculation. She had no knowledge he had a
That
firearm.
was negligence of the counselor and the dean that were at the meeting. They should, while the parents were in that meeting, they, by law, they can't open the kid's backpack because
Sure
that's
they
his
can.
locker.
Sure they can.
They were
Sure they
Yeah,
can.
they can.
Pardon?
They can.
They absolutely can.
They can.
On those school grounds.
If you heard, okay, let me bring y'all back in. Now, like I said, this case is still raw.
They do.
It's still in our public
By law, they can't
psyche,
do it.
but we must
They pull a copy,
move
that's how
on. Yes, sir.
Just real quick.
Real quick, he promises.
I'm catching
He
everything-
promises.
Yes, I'm catching everything right. The two major points to this law is minor and attended, and unattended firearms. Is that correct?
Well, see, there's a lot of
I mean, if I
things,
just cut to the chase.
to round this out, there are a lot of things that kids can still do with guns, and it's still legal. And they actually itemize it still in the statute, right? Some of the things that a child can do, right? Let's see. This section does not apply to any of the following circumstances, right? Contains a firearm with the permission of the minor's parent or guardian. Uses a firearm under the supervision of a minor's parent, guardian, or individual who is 18 years of older, who was authorized by the person's parent or guardian. You can go ranching and farming. If it's part of the minor's employment contract. There's a ton of things in here that are actually itemized that are legal and is done typically with some type of supervision of the minor. This right here just screams at me as witch hunt. Let's get our pound of flesh and let's make an example and just confuse the heck out of everyone. Yes.
My take on this, in short, is it's the agenda and the narrative that will drive the judicial system in any case. They'll do what they want to do because that opens the door to it.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Next